And one of the stats I found when I was writing the book was that by the age of 10, a child with ADHD is likely to have been told off 20,000 more times than a neurotypical child. Yeah. Right. So if you go into school every day and you are constantly told off, can you sit still? Can you focus? Stop staring out of the window. Put that down. Listen to me. Like, just constantly, your self-esteem is through the floor. One of my athletes said, I wish we could rename ADHD as Speedy brain, because it's the brain working so fast. And I was like, yes, that's why you can be so good at sport. You can see things before anybody else. You can see how to deal with situations before others might. And that can be, in some sports, that can be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see the patterns, your decision making. There's not even a decision to be made. You just do it.
Today's episode is sponsored by Sports Directory, your partner in PE. Is your PE budget feeling the squeeze? Struggling to find the right equipment to help your students thrive? Sports Directory has you covered. Whether you're restocking your PE cupboard, planning the perfect sports day, or looking to bring new activities into your curriculum, Sports Directory is there to support you. Plus, with their My School Reward scheme, you'll get 10% back on every order, ready to spend on your next purchase. Visit sportsdirectory.com for all the equipment you need to boost your PE lessons and see how My School Rewards can help your budget go further.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the PE Insights podcast. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different, and one that I'm really, really excited about, as I am very, very grateful to welcome Dr Josie Perry to the PE Insights podcast. Josie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. So Josie is a chartered sports psychologist and an author of 6 books, and also the director of Performance in Mind. So we're going to unpack one of those books particularly, and one of the topics of that book throughout this episode. But Josie, for the listeners who might not know you, would you like to tell them a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm a sports psychologist now. I was probably the person PE teachers hated at school. I was not sporty. I was the last one out of the changing rooms. I would find any excuse possible not to have to do PE.
Yeah.
I was active. I danced. I loved ballet, tap, jazz. But sport I was not into at all. And I went into quite a corporate job. I was a communications director for a big health charity until I was 37. But I did get into some sport when I left school. I just started off with kind of the 5K race for life, and then it became a 10K, and then it became a marathon, and then it became triathlon, and then it became Ironman. So I found my love of sport.
Oh, nice. That's amazing. And it's always interesting then for someone who's got to your position and the information you're giving people in sports coaching and physical education who haven't had a positive experience, because that's really important for us to interpret that as well, isn't it?
It's amazing. I will still find athletes, 50, 60-year-olds that have found sport later in life. They are amazing at what they do, but they still don't have an identity as an athlete because they didn't see themselves good at sport at school. And particularly when I was younger, and obviously before that, and school sport was entirely team sports. And if you're not a team sporty kind of person, then you weren't good at sport. And that kind of identity can stick. And I did a workshop for PE teachers recently, and one of the teachers said, well, what happens when we get the kids to choose their teams? And I was like, I can't believe that's still happening. Don't do that. She's like, why? And I'm like, because I was the kid that was never picked. And I still don't feel like I'm sporty because I was the kid that was rubbish at team sports, even though I've done 7 Ironman races now. Still can't get that identity because of the way that was done at school. So the more I see kids being encouraged to do loads of different sports, I've got a 9-year-old, she's got dance at school today. Like, she's like, yes, there's something I'm good at.
Yeah.
So the more we incorporate, the better, because I think that really, really helps keep our identity as someone that can be active and moving and enjoying physical activity.
That's amazing, and thank you for that reflection. And hopefully we're trying to travel along that journey of making those changes to be more meaningful for people. But still a little bit of a long way to go. I really want to talk about what led you to writing ADHD in sport. What kind of what pointed you in that direction? Why did you decide to start that journey?
I specialise with working with people who've got really high levels of performance anxiety.
Okay.
So they will be the people that are feeling sick, ill, sometimes throwing up before competitions, or they lose it when they're in the middle of the pitch. So they've got kind of really high levels of emotional dysregulation when things aren't going as well as they would like. And I'd always spotted two very strong traits in that group of people. Normally they're highly intelligent and they're very perfectionistic. And when you have both of those traits, your threat system seems to trigger very easily when you're not doing things as well as you would like. And obviously in sport, so much of it is uncontrollable that they're unable to emotionally regulate well, or they've got a real high levels of fear mismanagement before competitions. So I've worked a long time with that group. And then I started to notice more and more of that group also had ADHD traits. And we do now start to think that actually perfectionism is probably an ADHD trait anyway. But I was noticing more and more people were showing up going like, oh, by the way, I've got ADHD. And it was just making me think, oh, this is an area I need to understand a lot more about. It was only, I guess, 12 years ago, I did my master's training as a sport and exercise psychologist. And we were taught nothing about neurodiversity, wasn't even mentioned.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I started talking to other sports psychs and it's still not being mentioned. So I was like, right, I need a book. I need to learn about this. There was nothing. So there's a lot of ADHD books now, and there's some brilliant books and there's lots of toolkits, but there is nothing specifically on sport. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to do some proper research. And because I've published 5 books before, I went to one of my publishers and I was like, Andy, I know this isn't going to sell like millions of copies. It's quite niche, but I really think there is a need for a book in this area. And he agreed and commissioned it. And that was just under 2 years ago now. And it came out in April.
Yeah, amazing. And so PE and sport are sometimes often like miscontrived and wanting to be separated, as you've mentioned already. Like PE is more than sport. But why is ADHD, in your perspective, an important conversation for educators to know, in particular physical educators?
So there's a lot of research that shows how important physical activity is if you have ADHD. It can be an incredibly good way to get the dopamine that you might be missing. It can help you focus. It helps with lots of your cognitive abilities. It helps emotionally regulate you. So if you have ADHD, physical education can be very, very helpful. It can be a really good tool. And there is a ton of research to back that up. If you do sport and you have ADHD, there is very, very little research to say how to do your sport better with some of the barriers that ADHD will bring up.
Okay.
And we don't know because there's not enough evidence and there's not enough research yet, but we are thinking that there are far higher levels of ADHD in athletes than in other areas of the population, because some of the strengths that ADHD can give you work beautifully in sport. So you can see patterns where other people can't. One of my athletes said, I wish we could rename ADHD as Speedy brain because it's the brain working so fast. And I was like, yes, that's why you can be so good at sport. You can see things before anybody else. You can see how to deal with situations before others might. And that can be, in some sports, that can be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see the patterns, your decision making. There's not even a decision to be made. You just do it. You can be really creative. You can get hyper focused. So there can be some really good benefits of ADHD in sport. And one of the stats I found when I was writing the book was that by the age of 10, a child with ADHD is likely to have been told off 20,000 more times than
20,000?
Yeah. Right. So if you go into school every day and you are constantly told off, can you sit still? Can you focus? Stop staring out of the window. Put that down. Listen to me. Like just constantly, your self-esteem is through the floor. But if you get to go outside and do PE, where moving around, jiggling about, noticing things, going off and hyper-focusing works for you, you're going to get praise. That's going to be your area of safety. That's where you feel like you thrive. And so if you're getting all of that and you're hyper-focused on it because you love that sport, you're going to get good really quickly, which means you get even more praise, which means you get put up a level, which means you get to be in year 5 football rather than year 4 football. And it starts to really build into that self-esteem. And so sport becomes your safe place to hang out and to be yourself, and it can work really well.
That's fascinating. And I think it kind of links onto the next point I want to discuss around, like, teachers often think ADHD is just restlessness or disruption. It's obviously a misinterpretation. And what are the other traits then? You've talked about some traits already. How might it otherwise present?
So hyperactive will show up like that. And that's the kind of the typical a young boy in the class that can't sit still, can't cope with transitions, feels like they're kicking off very easily. What we're not so good at looking out for are the girls. And girls more often have that daydreaminess, the staring out of the window, not being able to focus and concentrate on the things they're supposed to be, drifting off. And that means they need different approaches. They still need that support, but they're not getting it because actually they're usually a good girl that just gets on with things and doesn't cause any trouble. And so there is a whole range of elements that we should be looking out for with children in a classroom.
And what can PE teachers tap into? How can we, your experience of working with athletes and then maybe thinking about younger children or even young adults, what can we tap into to kind of nurture those traits to turn them into strengths?
One of the most helpful things I did when I was researching the book is start to look into different motivation for different neurotypes. So if you are autistic, you tend to be motivated by safety. You're looking for things that feel safe. So you're looking for routines. You're looking for certain people that make you feel safe, certain groups. So if you have an autistic child in your group, it'd be about making sure they're with people they feel comfortable with, that you give them lots of information on how things might change so that they've got a routine to follow. So there's something that they're in control of, and that will get the best out of them. If you've got neurotypical children, they are motivated by importance and consequence. We've got a big match in 5 weeks. That means we need to focus on this, this, and this if we're to beat, St. Swithin's school. That works for them. With ADHD athletes, you are looking to motivate them through challenge and novelty. Like, is this interesting to them? Because if it's boring, not going to happen. So a lot of the athletes I've worked with or that I interviewed for the book started out as swimmers.
Okay.
But swimming is really hard if you have ADHD. I mean, Adam Peaty goes against this. Adam Peaty has talked about his ADHD and he's obviously a phenomenal swimmer. But many of the swimmers really struggle because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And you have to get up at 5:30 in the morning to have swim time. And 70% of those with ADHD really struggle with sleep. So morning sessions can be early morning sessions can be really, really harsh for that. So sports where there's a huge amount of repetition can be difficult. Whereas sports like basketball, I saw one estimate that was about 50% of pro basketball players have ADHD because it's different each time. There's constant movement. There's the novelty involved in it is short. You're getting instant dopamine buzzes every time you get a ball in that hoop. So different sports will work for different athletes. The biggest thing is finding the sport that kid loves, because if they love it, they'll hyper focus on it. They'll get really good. They'll give you everything. If they're not excited by it, you're going to struggle to engage them. So sometimes that can be if you're trying to teach, and it must be really hard. You've got 30, 60 kids in a group that you're really trying to engage, and you've got 10 of them with ADHD. 5 of them are hyper interested. Great. 5 of them do not care less. They're playing with the cones. They're messing about. They're staring off into the distance. That's going to be really hard for a teacher. But if you can get those kids up doing demonstrations, that keeps them engaged. If you give them a buddy who, when they're not listening because they were staring out the window, can tell them afterwards what it is they're supposed to be doing. If you get them to set up the cones, there are ways you can do things to keep everybody engaged. That means not everybody's being disrupted or drifting off and then needing to be brought back into the fold afterwards.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that and I'm thinking as you're talking, and you wrote in the book around structure and novelty, and you talked just briefly then about learners who are autistic, perhaps like the structure. So let's say we've got a class of 30 and 5 of them are autistic and 5 of them are ADHD and 5 need structure and 5 need novelty. How best can I manage those two things? Because there's quite a tension there, isn't there?
They are. So I would always say the more information you give your learners, the better. So for the book, I interviewed this amazing coach called Jess. She's a rugby league coach. Mm-hmm. She was so enthusiastic. She made me want to do rugby league, and not my world. But she coaches adults, mainly female rugby players. She says before every session in the morning, she will send out some almost like a quiz of what are we going to be working on this afternoon. So the people that like the novelty can engage and guess. And then by lunchtime, she'll send out the answers. So she's like, yeah, this is what we're working on. So those who like the routine and the knowledge beforehand can go, okay, I know what I'm coming prepared for right now. She says on one side of the pitch, she has music playing. So the people that like working out some music have that. But on the other side, it can be a lot quieter. So they don't. They don't do cheering anymore, but they might do kind of like a high five before they go off and work on something. So she works out how to give everybody a little bit of what they need. She has a thing called 5 minutes. Anybody is allowed to ask for 5 minutes of headspace. So that means if you're autistic and you're overwhelmed because so much has been going on, you ask for your 5 minutes and you go and sit by a tree and get quiet time. But it could also be you've had a really rubbish day at work, or you've just got your period, or you've had a fight with somebody and you need 5 minutes. So there's that kind of trusting that people know what's best for them.
Yeah.
And that's obviously hard when you've got little ones and they might well be trying to get out of PE or exercise. But a little bit of autonomy can go a long way, and a lot of structure. So you'll allow people to work away from the structure of right now you get 10 minutes to go and make up how you would practice shooting skills on your own. So again, they've got some autonomy, but within a structure.
Oh, nice.
So they get the novelty when they need it, but they also know what they're working against. Yeah. And I would say with ADHD, a lot of athletes are very honest and they're I don't like structure, but I know I need it.
Okay. Why do they say that?
Because it can be very, very easy to burn out with ADHD. If you're hyper focused on something, you'll go all on it. And actually, you can get very tired. Some of the theories around ADHD are not so much on focus or concentration, but it's energy management and where you're putting your energy at different times. And energy you can have high energy at some times and very, very low energy at others. So one of the techniques I'll use, it's in the book, but I use it a lot with athletes, is coin therapy, of kind of really understanding. You wake up every morning, you've got 100 coins of energy to spend. Where are you spending them? And actually, particularly for a younger person, to be able to look at their day and go, oh, I've got PE today. Oh, it's football. Love football. That's hardly any coins. I'm just going to enjoy myself there. That earns me dopamine. Brilliant. But if they look at it and go, oh, I've got swimming. Oh, I'm rubbish at swimming and it's embarrassing and I have to change and I have to think about being in front of other people in the changing room and, oh, that causes me lots of angst. That's loads of coins. So for someone to have that structure and routine to be able to plan, oh, that's going to use up a lot of coins. I might need an easy evening. Or, oh, a really easy day at school today. Right. That means I can go out and do an extra football training with my mates after school in the park because I'll have coins left over for it. And I like them as young as possible, starting thinking about that energy management.
That's really, really interesting because when you first said it, I thought, well, if there's something that I'm going to really enjoy, I might spend loads of coins on it because, that's something I'm looking forward to. So I'm going to throw all my energy into it. But you're saying it's the opposite.
Well, I wonder for if you're neurotypical, so Sunday afternoons, right, I do adult gymnastics. I am useless. Like, my goal is to get a clap when I actually achieve a skill. I know I'm rubbish, but I love it. And it's fun. It's really, really fun. But it does use up a lot of coins for me because I know I'm not very good. I would love to be, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Whereas I tend to find with athletes with ADHD, the fun stuff doesn't really use up any coins. It's earning coins. And so, yeah, if you've got a day just of fun stuff, brilliant. It's the stuff around it with ADHD that tends to use up a lot of coins. Some athletes really hate going on the bus to other schools to do a competition. International athletes, I've had athletes turn down England fests for things because they would rather not have to get on a plane, or they'd rather not have to share a room with somebody. That feels like it will use up so many coins, they won't actually be able to enjoy the sports element that they're doing. So I think each of us will be able to see something and going, oh, does that use a lot of coins for me? Yeah, it probably does. Right. What do I do around the rest of the day in order to balance that out? And school's hard because you don't get a choice over lots of what you're doing. It might be like, oh, I love that bit of it. Oh, but then I've got numeracy first and I'm not so good at that.
Sure.
So it is really hard for kids to have that much autonomy over where they're spending their coins. But where we can give them any and help them understand that some things will use up a lot of concentration and other ones won't, can be really beneficial.
That's really interesting. And I think it links into my next thought when I was going through what I'd like to unpack. And you've talked about motivation already, and then that energy balance. And there was a lot of kind of, in the way you were talking through that self-talk, like whether that's, like how could we get young people to buy into self-talk? Is there any ways that you would suggest teachers look at maybe encouraging positive self-talk to young people or young adults?
It's really hard because often with ADHD, you've got an incredibly loud brain. I had a stat, not from ADHD, just for anybody, that we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. Like, that is a loud head with a lot of stuff going on. Apparently about 10% of people have quiet brains, but the rest of us are kind of... I know, wow. And I've never met any of them. Most of us kind of have a lot of thoughts going on that we're trying to battle through. And one of the difficulties with ADHD is that you've captured a thought, you might want to do something about it, but another 20 ping into your head and you forget what the thing was you were supposed to be doing. So it is hard to deal with self-talk. I guess the groups I'm seeing the most are those who are quite perfectionistic. They will work incredibly hard and they'll go far, but they are always setting a really high bar to work towards. And then they will give it everything. And as soon as they get close to that bar, they don't go, cool, look at me, aren't I awesome? They go, oh, well, if I could do it, it clearly must be easy. I should have set the bar higher. And they set the bar higher. And there's always going to be this gap between where they are and where they think they should be. And that results in a lot of negative self-talk. Of like, I should be better than this, I should be, and often comparisons to other people as well. So yes, we can have some positive kind of mantras that they might use, and we can practice things like reframing, and we will do that. So every time it's like, I should be better, it's like, well, how could you reframe that? I've come a long way. And we'll help them practice those, but it's really difficult. What can work very well is instructional self-talk. So I call it coach on a shoulder. Okay. The idea that, say you're doing cross country and your PE teacher, your coach is shouting something at you to improve your technique whilst you're doing it. So kind of pump your arms or feet higher or head up. Whatever that thing is usually where your technique tends to fall apart. When you've got despondent, when something's gone wrong, when you're tired. And that message is a really good one to give yourself to keep you performing better. we have to keep it simple. So a lot of athletes, when I say kind of, what would you tell yourself to do in that moment? Or what might a coach say to you? They will go, oh, relax. I know I'm supposed to relax. It's like, that's true, but relax is quite a complex instruction to give your brain. Relax involves so many different elements. And when we break it down, it's like, oh yeah, my shoulders are supposed to go down. They're supposed to go back. My chest should come forward. My hips should tilt. And it's like, yeah, that's a tricky instruction. Whereas if you were to say, drop shoulders, once you've dropped the shoulders, the rest all tends to fall into place. Rather than kind of running along going, relax, relax, never going to work. If you run along telling yourself, drop shoulders, that works much better. So the problem is the things you will need to do in the moment when your body's gone tight and tense and probably into your threat system, they're all lodged in the kind of logical part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. One, that is harder to access with ADHD.
Okay.
But two, you can't access it at all if your threat system is triggered. So all of the tools I would teach somebody to breathing techniques, grounding techniques, self-talk messages to use, there is no access to them once your threat system is triggered. That part of the brain is inaccessible. So we have to write everything down until we've practiced it long enough. If you practice it for a couple of months every day, it'll move into your habit function. You remember to do it. Most of the time you won't. So we have to have things written down. So you can often tell athletes I've worked with on Instagram because they've got pictures or drawings all over their hands, or they've got messages all over their water bottles, or they've got tape on their wrist with something on them. Or we often do colourful breathing. So the two colours I would like them to be breathing in and out will be scribbled on their hand. But that's really helpful for the moment when you're feeling, I'm under threat. I can't remember what I'm supposed to do. This is a stupid thing to be doing. I might as well quit. All of the negative head chatters going on, to be able to look and have that little message really, really helpful.
That's fascinating and something, I guess, tangible and practical that teachers might want to be able to use in their classroom.
Yeah, there's a good one we use. A lot of the footballers I work with are kind of 13, 14-year-olds trying to get into academies. And so they're doing lots of matches that they know scouts are going to be at. And scouts tell me what they're looking for is no heads down. So you make a mistake, you're back on the ball within 5 seconds. If they see the head and shoulders go down, they're just missing you because they don't want somebody that's going to sulk and not be able to get back into it immediately. So when I've then worked with footballers, we're like, what's got a memory of 5 seconds? And they're like, goldfish. I'm like, great. Draw a goldfish on your hand. Because the second your head goes down because you've messed something up, you see that goldfish and you're like, can't be like that. Can't be a goldfish. Have to be straight back on it. And then they get back on it. So simple things like you're not going to be able to read lots of writing on your hand, but you can see a picture of a goldfish and remember, oh yeah, head up, let's get back on it. Or you might see a picture of a triangle, but that triangle to you means the 3 pillars of your professionalism in your sport of how you want to be. And instantly going, that is like, oh yeah, this is how I need to do it. So pictures, images that give you a visual reminder, and often athletes with ADHD are quite visual, can prompt you into doing the right thing.
And I think the examples you gave there were really awesome. But I guess they're kind of for athletes that are working at the top level of movement competency and maybe, looking to get into an elite academy, for example. Is it still a strategy that any child could use in the classroom to remind them of, to get back into that state?
Yeah, my poor daughter is she's my little experiment. So lots of these I will practice on her. She's 9. She is an awesome gymnast, loves dance. Not so hot on team sports or anything that involves a ball. So we have to do a lot of motivation to get her excited for those elements. And she's a great runner, but she refuses to do any run practice. So it gives us a good chance to be able to practice like, right, what's the thing you need to remember when you get tired at parkrun? And she'll be like, oh, head up. And it's like, right. And that gives me the right thing to be able to shout at her. But you can also engage her in it. What do you need to remember? And she's like, head up. And so it works for any level of and a real focus on, and my focus for everybody, I will work with Olympic champions on this, just as I will with a 9-year-old, is if you are focused on outcomes, particularly if you're perfectionistic, you're going to trigger your threat system a lot. And the more you do your sport, the more it attaches to your identity. So an outcome feels really important to you. If I'm not a good runner, I'm not a good person. So we are always trying to move people away from outcomes and towards inputs. So what are the inputs to doing that PE lesson that will make you better at it? And I spend a lot of time with parents trying to teach parents how not to ask results.
Yeah.
So actually, I like my daughter's school. They never put the results out in the newsletter. It's always about, we were really proud to see how well the team played and the community spirit they brought to it. I will never ask my daughter how she did in cross country. So I will look in her bag afterwards to see what certificate she got, because I'm nosy. But I make a real point that I will never ask her what results she got, because I don't want her to think that is important. And the more we can help any of our students focus on inputs rather than results, the better it will be.
What type of questions do you ask your daughter after cross country?
Did you enjoy it? Did you work hard the whole way through? Did you help anybody else? Did anybody else help you? So we're really focusing on, most of our kids will not go on to be elite athletes. Like 99.99% of them won't go on to be elite athletes. What really matters is that they stay doing activity throughout life. And we know if we can keep them in to like 13, 14, 15, they're much more likely to do it as adults. And then they've got an instant hobby. They've got something that keeps them healthy. When they move to different places, they've got an instant way of connecting with more people. It prevents loneliness. There are so many benefits of doing exercise throughout life. In fact, I host a podcast called Be Braver. And last week we spoke to Dr. Liz Erodian, who was a breast cancer surgeon who's had breast cancer herself 3 times. So she now does a lot of content creation around this area. And she was telling us the cancer recovery rates for those who exercise before and during cancer are phenomenally better. I think 30 or 40% better. So as PE teachers, you could have such a huge impact on somebody's lifelong health chances and friendship chances and enjoyment by being able to find ways to keep people doing sport and activity the whole way through their childhood. And we don't do that by focusing on whether you won 3-0 against the local school. We do that on highlighting, it was so good to see the way that you encouraged so-and-so. And I loved the way that when you lost that ball, you came straight back on it and you were tenacious and you pushed your way through it. Like highlighting their strengths. And that goes for the whole ADHD element. The more we focus on people's strengths, the better they will do. So a real strengths-based approach, a real approach on who do you want to be when you're on a football pitch or a hockey pitch or when you're running, is what will keep them sticking with their sport. And then you've had a phenomenal impact.
Yeah, and I guess it's really pleasing to hear that from your perspective, because it's what we would call physical literacy in our space, that physically literate human who has a really positive relationship with movement throughout the course of their life. And that's really, really important.
I do get a lot of pickup though when I do workshops from teachers who think that's the kind of the pandering to outcomes do matter and we do care about them and we need to push those. And I end up in some big debates, I guess, about I'm being really woke about rewarding everybody. And it's like when you go to a race and everybody gets a medal, we should be celebrating those successes. I guess I'm seeing it from even the Olympic gold medalists I work with will benefit more and stay in their sport longer and get better individual results if they focus on their inputs and they learn to do that from young. So it's not that we don't want to celebrate people doing brilliant things. But it's my first book, I started with the definition of competition, which is compietra,
Go on.
which means better together. And it's that idea about competition shouldn't just be, can I beat everybody? It's like, how do we use each other to continually all move forward?
I love that.
And with that, we can all be better. We can all stick doing our sport longer. We can all be healthier. We can learn more from each other. It's a lot more fun. And every kid I work with, when I say, what do you love about your sport in their assessment session? They don't say, I love winning. They say, I love being with my friends.
It's real. I'm so kind of really it pricked my ears a little bit when you said competition, because we've recently in education undergone a curriculum and assessment review, and there were some suggestions for physical education, and the word competition is being banded around in there as something that is often misinterpreted or has different interpretations. So it's really interesting to hear you share again your perspectives on that. If you could give PE teachers some top tips that they could apply to practice, maybe in relation to ADHD learners, but maybe more generically, what would those be?
The biggest one I would say is the strengths-based element. Find the strengths in every kid that you have and highlight those. I do a session, usually with most athletes, around kind of a confidence bank of how can you look at your strengths, your skills, successes you've had, setbacks you've overcome, difficult things you've done, to really build up kind of their understanding of themselves. One of the sections we do in it is nice things other people have said to you.
Okay.
And actually, I often have to message the parents to say, is there something I can put in their jar or their bank for them? Because they're like, oh, I don't know what my mum or dad would say about me. They can always tell me something a coach or a PE teacher has said to them that was positive. It really, really matters. They notice. And their faces when they're telling me are amazing. So you get to have real power as a PE teacher if you can find something that somebody is good at, or a way that they are being. Like, I'm really proud of how tenacious you were. I could see you were really scared of doing that today, and you did it anyway. I'm so proud of you. Like, that is what a kid will remember. So the more you can focus on the strengths-based element and the process of, like, you were a little bit better than you were last week at it. Like, even me as a 49-year-old, when I go to gymnastics and my coach notices something I've done on the air track and is like, yeah, your feet were together today. That's a tiny thing, but it shows that progression. It helps you feel like you're moving forward and getting better. That is what the kids will remember. So a strengths-based approach would be my biggest tip.
That's brilliant. And I wanted to kind of flip back to something you raised earlier, and that was around like belonging and identity. I know it's a big thing that you're really interested in. And from a psychologist perspective, I wonder whether there's anything teachers can do to help young people develop their sense of belonging and identity in a PE class.
Oh, that's a good question. It's hard because sometimes when you do things in a class, you end up excluding others. So I would say the getting kids to pick each other into teams, I would love to see that. I thought it had disappeared. I was really surprised when someone mentioned it recently, because that can feel very exclusionary when you're the last person. And you feel like you're being judged by your peers is really hard. Yeah.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, that one, isn't it? Because I think some PE teachers might think they're giving the group autonomy and then allowing them to choose the groups, but actually it can also segregate, ostracize and isolate at the same time.
Totally. My daughter and a friend had a joint birthday party recently at laser tag, and the guys that ran it were like, both my daughter and her buddy were like, yeah, do we get to choose our teams? And the guy said to me, it really doesn't go well when we do that. And I was like, no, I totally get it, because whoever is going to be picked last feels like they've been picked last, feels like they're least popular. So for teachers to do that can be really good. Once they're in the team, yeah, get them to have some of that sense of belonging and like, yeah, what are you going to call yourselves? What's going to be your strength? What are you really working on today? What skill can you guys work on that then you show the other team? So helping people feel that sense of belonging is good. School teams are great for that. I see the benefits of that. But again, when it becomes exclusionary of like, I've only made the third team and not the second team, those bits can feel hard. So to be able to show it's not that you're first, second or third, but you've made the football team and we'll have different people playing different weeks. That isn't to say you're going to put out lots of people that football's not their skill into that first team, but you still build a bigger team. And the real element of how can they support each other. So I love what we see. I deal a lot with athletes who are injured, usually because they've ended up overtraining. They've pushed themselves so hard. They've got injured and they don't just lose the thing they love doing. They lose their coping mechanism for stress. And they lose their social side. They lose a lot in one go and it's pretty devastating. So to keep as much of that social side is something I'm always trying to help them with, of like, how do you stay as social as possible? How do you support others? My daughter's PE teacher is brilliant. If she's not feeling great, she doesn't want to do PE, he gets her to help with setting up of things. That calms, you feel part of it, you get to support your friends. Half an hour later, you've joined in anyway. So finding ways to keep people really included and to feel part of that bigger thing is really helpful.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Josie, I know you're a very busy lady with a client coming up very soon. So just to kind of round off the episode, I've got kind of two questions. First one is, where can listeners learn more about your work and where can they find you?
So I have a website called performanceinmind.co.uk. That has lots of tools and techniques that you might want to look at. It also has all the references for my ADHD and sport book. I have another book as well called I Can, Teenage Athlete's Guide to Mental Fitness. So it's a workbook that I love it when I see a kid's work, like they're filled in every single section, but it's all of the mental skills we would hope to see junior athletes have, picking on things like performance anxiety or confidence. Identity is in there. So all the references for both those books are on my website if you want to go deep into it and find the research. Otherwise, those two books, I Can and ADHD in Sport, are probably most helpful for teachers.
Wonderful. And then finally is, what question would you like everyone listening to the podcast today to go away with and reflect on after this episode?
I would think about that motivation element. I think that's what really surprised me most when I was researching it. And it helps me, say if I've got family members with ADHD, to when I go into a situation to be able to think, what's their motivation for doing this? It really helps some of the person. I might take something way too personally because it isn't the way I would do something, because my motivation will be different. And I think if teachers can look at the children that they're working with and go, they're motivated by this, that helps you think, how do I get the best out of them? What can I say to this kid to really help them push themselves? That's really helpful. So to have that kind of, not just what are they good at, but looking around at the children in my class, what are they motivated by? That will help you get a lot more out of them. Yeah,
thank you. And that's one thing I'm definitely going to go away and have a look at is, those learners that have individual needs, what, the different types of motivation that you talked about earlier. Thank you so much for fitting me into your busy schedule, Josie. I really appreciated hearing your insight and you sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me.